Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Dreamworks Switch to Life. And for today's video, we're going to be reviewing Dreamworks' first ever movie, which has just barely turned 25 years old, Antz. And it's a really bad movie. I honestly don't blame you guys if you haven't watched this movie because it's really bad. The animation quality, I get it. It's DreamWorks' first movie. There's bound to be some animation mistakes. And at this point, the movie is 25 years old. Of course it's gonna look aged. But the quality of this film is so bad compared to the 1995 Toy Story or the 1998 A Bug's Life, which I'm pretty sure is the only reason this movie even exists. So, what you may not know is that DreamWorks was only started to become the anti-Disney. This essentially means that if Disney made one movie, then DreamWorks would make their own movie based around a similar concept. I think that the creator of DreamWorks heard that Disney was making A Bug's Life, and they decided, we can do one better, and they made a movie about only ants. And the animation quality, I mean, it's good, they definitely tried. And hey, at least the animation is fluid instead of stiff. However, there is a lot of world building to this movie, and that's really good. I just love how they characterized all of the talking insects. They made it so that the ants are really small compared to other insects like wasps and termites, so they're very scary. And then there's also the fact that how they organized the colony to be a mindless drone where only the colony matters, not individuality, which is the main lesson of the movie, by the way. There's also a giant UFO that shoots down a death ray, but it's really just a magnifying glass used by a human. Also used by a human is a fly swatter, and then there's the fact that there's a human who gets gum stuck on the bottom of his foot, and he runs, and all the ants are seeing are two giant pillars with them trapped on the bottom of them. And then there's Puddles, which is actually a lake to the ants, and they need to use a leaf as a boat to get across. So yeah, I would say that this movie has some great world building, but aside from that, mostly everything about this movie is bad. Just the story, it's about this worker ant who realizes he's insignificant.
Insignificant? Excellent. You've made a real breakthrough. I have? Yes, see. You are insignificant. I am?
And then one night he dances with the princess, decides to go out on a date with her and pretend to be a soldier, and instead of getting a date with the princess, he ends up going to war where he becomes the only survivor simply because he's a coward and hid the entire battle. And not to mention, when he comes back a war hero, he kidnaps the princess, and then once they're outside of the anthill, he allows her to go back to the anthill or stay with him and go to Insectopia. When they finally find Insectopia, they eventually fall in love with each other. Then the villain comes into play, and the villain is this General Mandible who just so happens to have a plan to wipe out the entire ant colony simply because he considered the worker ants weak and the soldiers strong. But in order to just start anew, he also has to kill the queen, which is the maker of every single ant. I mean, that's kind of poor planning on his part. Or maybe it's not, because Princess Bala is destined to become the next queen of the ants, which means all General Mandible has to do is convince her to be part of the new ant colony so that he can create an ant colony where only the strong belong.
You've got a fighter spirit, Bala. And that's just what we need to start our new colony.
No workers, no diggers, no weak link, just soldiers. And that's good and all. And his plan to wipe out the old colony is have them dig until they reach a puddle. And once that puddle goes into the ant colony, it will flood the entire place, killing every single ant trapped inside. And while the kidnapping of Princess Bala does interfere with his plans, he simply just sends Lieutenant Cutter to go to Insectopia to bring her back. And when he does, it makes Z decide to go back so he can save her. But upon saving her, they discover that the plan is to destroy the entire ant colony, and they decide to stick around long enough so that they can save it. And they work together so that they can, in fact, save it by digging out through the ceiling. And eventually, General Mandible dies because he tries to kill Z. And, well,
there you have it. Your average boy meets girl, boy likes girl, boy changes underlying social order story.
So the main lesson of this movie is don't be so caught up in helping society that you aren't willing to help yourself. What I mean by that is Z tried to do something he wanted to do, and he went and did it. He became as an example for all of the other ants in the colony. And at the very end of the movie, he tells them to make sure that they think for themselves, not just follow orders blindly.
Look, I got orders. And those orders say dig.
What if someone ordered you to jump off a bridge? Oh, brother, I'm asking the wrong guy here.
And while I can understand where this movie is coming from, that's a stupid lesson. Okay, so while the story itself is pretty well told, it's still a really bad story. There's not really any unnecessary scenes. They got the point across just enough. But the thing is, it was still a really bad story. And it's not just the story. The casting and the characters, those are all pretty annoying too. I mean, come on. You gotta admit that Z's voice is a little annoying.
Ouch.
Not to mention his voice actor, Woody Allen, was actually charged with criminal activity after this movie was made, which prevented an Antz 2 being made. Thank goodness for that. And I did mention that the characters are a bit annoying. Like Z, for instance. He's nowhere near your typical hero, he's just in it for himself. And Princess Bala, she comes across as bratty and annoying, and the way that she falls in love with Z is totally unearned.
Excuse me, you kidnapped me, remember? That means you have certain responsibilities. You can't just abandon me here in the wilderness.
There's also the main villain of this movie, General Mandible. He's completely forgettable. Dreamworks is known for making amazing villains and antagonists for their movies. And unfortunately, this is not the case with Antz. The one likable character is Weaver, who is kind of the buff but dumb archetype. Even though he's an extremely loyal friend, interested in are girls.
Would I meet some worker girls?
Are you kidding? They always go after the new guy.
Specifically Azteca. So it's good that he actually only has interest for one girl in particular eventually. But that brings me to another point about this movie. Doesn't seem like this movie was made for kids. There are swear words pretty much every 5 minutes. And not to mention, they bring up sexual content not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. It's not even in subtle ways either. And at the very end of the movie, there is this wasp who acts completely drunk. And I mean, I get it, your wife just died, but come on, why is that in a kid's movie? Honestly, the one good thing that I actually like about this movie is its music. I really like this background music, the music that they inserted, and one of the best scenes in this movie, sadly, happens to be when they're marching off to war, and they sing,
Ants go marching 3 by 3, hurrah, 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 we're off to face our destiny, hurrah.
Which actually brings me to my next point. There's a scene in the movie that's extremely gruesome. So Z is walking across a battlefield and he stumbles across his old friend Barbados. And it's not Barbados with the body, it's just his head, a talking head. And it's gruesome, disgusting, and it's just plain gross.
No. I can see it in your eyes. I'm a goner.
You want to haunt a kid's dreams? That's the way to do it. So, in summary, this is a really, really, really bad movie, and I would not recommend it for anyone, especially kids. And yes, I know it's rated PG, but still, in my opinion, this is the worst, if not one of the worst DreamWorks films ever made. So if you like this movie, good for you, and I'm sorry I'm butchering it, but unfortunately, this is just my honest opinions of what I feel the movie is like. But hey, you know what they say, ants had to crawl so that How to Train Your Dragon could soar. Or something like that. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. You probably didn't, but I hope that you subscribe anyway so that you can keep up to date on all DreamWorks content. We are very close to hitting our goal of 100 subscribers before November 17th when the DreamWorks next movie, Trolls 3 Band Together, hits theaters. But until then, I hope that you guys are staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. Until then, bye-bye.
Do you know how much trouble you can get into for even talking about impersonating a soldier? You can get in trouble just for listening to someone talking about impersonating a soldier.